So Christopher Hitchens is obviously a big hero of the left, and loads of people love him. And he's a public intellectual superstar, obviously from the past now since he's dead. But I happen to know something about Christopher Hitchens, and I've worked many jobs in hospitality, and I happen to know that when Christopher Hitchens was in restaurants, he was a bit of a cunt to waiters and things, and taxi drivers and people like that. And I have absolutely no time for that sort of person. I don't know what it is. Like, I think he's come from a background of privilege. Obviously, he's gone to private schools and then to Oxford, and then he's entered into high level journalism as a career with, I think it was the Sunday Times initially, then the New Statesman. But if you're swanning about in restaurants having lunches with other like literary types and so on, and you were being mean to the waiters, like, fuck you. You're a scumbag. That's all you really are. You're an overprivileged scumbag. If you do anything like click at a waiter, I've been clicked at once before and I didn't go over to the table. I was like, fuck that. They're like that, like, no. I don't fucking think so. So really, like, I think that might have been Christopher Hitchens' true colours, and I was trying to be like so impressive as an anti-theist, atheist, or whatever. But it's basically disrespect to every culture on the planet, including Christianity. I think being anti-religious is at least being culturally insensitive, and people who try to foist their atheism on others, or people who slam Christians in general, or whatever, because there's a lot of very, very intelligent Christians out there, and a lot of Christians, I think, are great people and do amazing things. And that's true of any religious group, really. But I have no time for people who are that insensitive and have such a superior attitude, and think that because of their overprivileged background and the frankly luck that they've had in life, and maybe an element of hard work also, possibly. But then again, how hard did Christopher Hitchens really work? He, after all, crashed out of Oxford with a third class degree, so I think he's probably quite a lazy student as well. And he's, just because of the background, the privilege, he's gotten into a, 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 a high position in journalism. And I, having worked hospitality, it's the lowest paid job going. It's a job for students, really, the young, or people, who, for whatever reason, didn't go to university, or people who can't get any other job. It is what it is. It's a low paid, it's hard work. Is what it's very hard. It's hard to survive on like 300 quid a week, which is what you're making. And I couldn't make rent the last time I was working in hospitality. I was working as a barman in a pub in Salisbury. My rent was 700 quid a month. Like, I could maybe have paid that and not, and I wouldn't have been able to afford to eat. And because I was working, they cut off my fucking benefits, which is what they do every time. And oh, it's so hard out there for people. I'm not talking about like these luminaries who've gone through the British public school system. I've gone through the British public school system, but like I didn't care for it at the time. I didn't care for the elitism. I didn't care for this notion that they get so much extra attention at school. They're nursed through their A levels with like loads of attention given to them, and things like sneaky things like extra time in exams and all this sort of stuff. And they go through it and end up with, and have to work hard as well. A lot of people do work hard there also, but they're babied through it a lot more, and you have a lot more class time, smaller classes, more individual attention. It's basically a leg up, and I've never liked that. I don't know why I went to well, I know why I went to the first private secondary school I went to. I was forced to go to a private primary school. I was originally in the state system, and I had friends there, and I loved it. I was happy. And then, I was put into a private primary school against my will. And, well, it was okay. It was good. It was a good school. But, like, I had to leave all my friends. So I was devastated at the time. But that's another point. decided to go to a private secondary school because I got a scholarship there. So like they thought I had potential and it was worth sponsoring. And like for getting a scholarship, my dad gave me 250 quid so I could buy a computer. And like that's the sort of thing that incentivized me when I was that age. I don't know why I went to a private school for sixth form though. I really think I would have enjoyed college more. Like sixth form college, just an ordinary place. Because a few of my friends were going to Froome College, and I didn't do that. I don't know why not, but I should have done actually on reflection. But it's just it would have been better maybe. But anyway, it's a different point. Like I don't think Christopher Hitchens is such a hero. I don't think he's so intelligent even. I mean, he's very well read and so on, obviously, but it's just like I think he's grandstanding a bit. I don't agree with his stance on the Iraq War either. He was, thundering after this forever war against jihad, which was, supposed to be epitomized in the Afghan conflict. He was just saying, "Oh, it'll be a training ground against jihad, forever." It's like, well, like what are you trying to do? Eliminate Islam from their culture or something? Or like it's going to be a constant war against Taliban hill tribes. You'll never take Afghanistan like fully. You'll never. So like they had to throw in the towel at some point, and that was always going to happen. We were never going to be there forever. I would never advocate any war, any. I think nothing is achieved by war very often. We achieved nothing in Afghanistan. Iraq is still in ruins with pseudo democracy and about 1,000 political parties or something like that, a lot of which are extremist. And then there's the fallout from Iraq, the whole what ended up being the war in Syria and the Arab Spring. And well, the Arab Spring may have produced benefits. It got rid of Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. It got rid of Gaddafi. But then again, like I think Gaddafi still like has his defenders, doesn't he, in Libya? And these sorts of things happen. But then ultimately, the bloodiest civil war in the history of the Middle East, the Syrian conflict, which I suppose did eventually remove Bashar al-Assad. But and are things better in Syria now? Do you see what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, um, I yeah, I think that Noam Chomsky is probably a better class of public intellectual than Christopher Hitchens, and Noam Chomsky was never advocating for the Iraq War, I don't think. Saying like sponsoring democratic forces within Iraq, and if they want to have their own revolutionary takeover and try democracy, then and so be it. But really, like their politics, why is it any of our business? If you see what I mean, like what? Why do we have to interfere with every country's politics around the globe? Can't we just like allow them to do their own thing? And to be honest, like if it's a country like say North Korea, like what are we going to do about that? Like we can't do anything about that. Do you see? Do you see that without causing a lot of destruction and a huge loss of life for the North Korean people? And we might even remove the people in power and install a democracy, but we'll leave their country in ruins unless we rebuild it with our investment. It's not going to go anywhere as a humanitarian effort. They said we went to Iraq to liberate and not to conquer, but you liberated, destroyed their infrastructure. It's hundreds of thousands of people dead, civilians. Huge loss of life. It's for their own good. That's what we're saying. That's what the likes of Christopher Hitchens were saying. It is for the good of the Iraqi people that we're doing it. This is neo-colonialism. This is, and he's a cunt to waiters. So I hate him. Obviously, I actually hate him. I think I don't like him at all. I think his writing style is pompous, overblown, overrated as a writer and a thinker and a philosopher. You know, like what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Sounds very clever, doesn't it? That's called Hitchens' razor. But what if there's no evidence in the short term, but an investigation needs to happen to expose the evidence or find out what was really going on? Something's indeterminate. Well, the evidence might exist out there. There might be evidence, but people might think there's no evidence for that reason. So we need to investigate crime. Possibly, this is, what, someone makes an accusation, then the police investigate. That's how the justice system works. So what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Well, define evidence also. That's a very interesting possibility, isn't it? What evidence do we have for, say, the existence of God? Like, why do we dream, for instance? Why isn't the universe composed of one elementary particle? If there was nothing that created the universe is like, how do you get something out of nothing? Do you see what I mean? And yeah, there are philosophical issues that we can discuss related to the existence of God, but I think God is one explanation for this. If we live in a lower dimensional state, for instance, that's been created by a higher dimensional entity, that's a possibility, and that is in itself a creation narrative. If we allow these ideas of extra dimensions and string theory thinking to enter our thinking, then perhaps there's lots of deities and so on, and high dimensional entities, and those have all been created way back in the past, if concepts such as time are even relevant in that context. And they all create universes and create life and create lower dimensional beings such as ourselves. And maybe this is what we find out when we die. And I think there's experiences that we can have that will put us in touch with possibly higher truths of nature, such as a DMT experience or a psilocybin experience. But what did Christopher Hitchens do? Did he ever take DMT or psilocybin? No. He swaggered around smoking cigarettes and drinking Johnny Walker Black Label like he thinks he's fucking Winston Churchill or something. And he died an early death because he did too much of that. And, he... Yeah, I don't know. I think he was... was he a wise man? I admired him hugely, obviously. And I used to be very, very tempted by atheism. But ultimately, I called myself a pantheist, which, in fairness, he said he had no problem with. He has a problem with religious extremists, really, and like Bible thumping Christians and so on, and people trying to ban abortion and teach creationism in schools and all that stuff. Which, yeah, I think I agree with as well. I don't think we should teach creationism in schools. I think we should teach evolution. I think people should be scientifically literate. But saying religion itself is evil, I think is stupid, because it's not evil. There's a lot in religion that is really quite good. If you're a sincere religious person, if you're a sincere Christian, and you realize and you adhere to things like judge not lest ye be judged, and you seriously take that on board and meditate on these things and contemplate these things. As I've said, some Christians are wonderful people. It's like Malcolm Guite, whose channel I follow, this wonderful old reverend chaplain of Girton College at Cambridge, and a prolific poet, and a very, very good poet as well. And he's written this fantastic Arthuriad that I want to buy. This epic King Arthur poem. And yeah, it's like membership of any group. You can't define a group by its psychopaths and by its unfortunate examples of that group. You find this with anything. women. There's bad women. There are. Women aren't all saints. There's bad black people. There's bad gay people. You know, Jeffrey Dahmer was gay. He was an evil scumbag, obviously, but like we can't do that. Like the same is true of Christians and Muslims and Jews and every other religion. We can't judge them by the bad apples and by bad things that they've done because like, it's always like Al Qaeda is a tiny minority among Muslims. I've tried to gauge the number of potential Islamic extremists in the UK. It is in the hundreds. There are 4 million Muslims in the UK. The likes of Christopher Hitchens and the rest of the fucking new atheists really just hate religious people. And they look down upon them and they think they're intellectually superior to them. And they're just whipping up hatred and division, really. And you know, atheists, like some of them calling themselves brights. Oh, we're bright because we don't believe in God. Like you haven't thought about God really for 5 seconds. You haven't really contemplated it. I've spent a lot of time like reading like Spinoza and so on, and trying to come to terms with this stuff intellectually, and trying to. You always end up back on the path to wisdom doing that. So you always end up to an extent back with religion. Do you not see that? It's really unfortunate that you would just dismiss our culture like that and our intellectual traditions also, and just dispensing with the idea of God. Like I think that Werner Heisenberg quote really says a lot. The first sip of the glass of the natural sciences will make you an atheist. At the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. And that, I think, is a good synthesis of the problems with atheism. It's uninformed when it comes to science. If you've really looked into particle physics and things, like, why does it operate the way it operates? Why are there 17 fundamental particles? Why not just one type of fundamental particle? If blind force created all this, why it seems to have it betrays some level of design. I think, yeah, like we have different particles to perform different functions within the standard model, so it yeah, it does seem contrived on a level. It seems like it's been designed, frankly. And the process of evolution, we can say like, well, that was God's plan. That is His design. Yeah, that's how intelligent design operates. It operates via evolutionary principles in genetics. And saying like, well, God couldn't think of that. Like, what? God's too stupid to have thought of genetics. I don't think. Something like that. And the more, because the universe is divine, isn't it? It must be. It surely is. It's the huge beauty of the thing. I think there's a good aesthetic argument to be made, and it's better than the fine-tuning argument. I think this argument that something beautiful has been created. So, and it contains love as well, which means it's benevolent on a level. We're bathed in starlight, and we see gorgeous things around us, objectively gorgeous things, I think. And how can you think that this doesn't come from at least a benevolent place of some description, rather than a place of sheer randomness? But yeah, I mean, I could go on, but no, I think I believe in the pantheist synthesis, but I also wouldn't have dismissed the possibility of higher dimensional entities. I believe in electron densities mediating gravity in this 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional space, but I wouldn't discount the possibility that there is something beyond that in higher dimensions of reality also, such as God or gods. So yeah, that's what I believe in. think Christopher Hitchens was talking sideways out of his behind, but yeah, I'm not an anti-theist either. Religious people, like, yeah, you're fine. As long as you are fine, if you see what I mean. And, you know, not gonna blow anyone up or burn an abortion clinic or what have you. But yes, I think I've said enough. Thank you everyone for watching. Bye, I love you lots.